The phone camera was already rolling when Evan Price raised his voice loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave. Now." Nia Caldwell didn't flinch. She stood there in her navy blazer and simple flats, hands folded calmly in front of her, and checked her watch like she was timing something. Around her, customers whispered and recorded. The marble floor gleamed under fluorescent light. The brass Metropolitan Trust logo hung on the wall behind the teller line, polished, proud, untouchable. Evan didn't know it yet, but he was about to humiliate the woman who owned every inch of it. If you want to see how power, prejudice, and one perfectly timed phone call can flip an entire institution upside down, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button, drop a comment with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And let's dive in. It started like any other Tuesday. Nia Caldwell had been up since 5 that morning, same as always. Coffee, emails. A quick scan of the overnight reports from Metropolitan Trust's compliance team. Nothing unusual. The bank she'd built from a single storefront 23 years ago now had 47 branches across 3 states, a portfolio worth north of $8 billion, and a reputation for reliability that she'd earned one cautious decision at a time. She didn't advertise her role. She didn't need to. Nia had learned early that real power didn't require a title card or a corner office with her name on the door. It required showing up, listening, and knowing your institution better than anyone else ever could. So when the quarterly branch audits came around, Nia didn't send a team. She went herself, unannounced, dressed down, clipboard optional. She wanted to see what her branches looked like when no one was performing for the boss. Today's target was the downtown location on 5th and Merchant, a flagship branch in the heart of the business district. It should have been a model of professionalism. Clean, efficient, welcoming. Nia pushed through the heavy glass doors just after 2 in the afternoon. The lobby was sleek and modern. Marble floors, soft lighting, a row of teller windows on the left, a customer service desk on the right, and a waiting area with leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Tasteful. Expensive. Exactly the kind of first impression she'd designed. A few customers milled around. A woman in a business suit stood at the ATM. An older man filled out a deposit slip at the counter. No one paid Nia much attention as she stepped inside and took a slow look around. Good. That's how it should be. She moved toward the customer service desk, where a young woman with a sleek ponytail and a name tag that read May Park, assistant manager, was finishing up with a client. May looked efficient, professional, the kind of employee Nia liked to see. But before Nia could reach the desk, a voice cut through the quiet hum of the lobby. "Excuse me, can I help you?" Nia turned. The man approaching her was in his late 20s, clean cut, wearing a suit that fit just a little too well for someone his age. His name tag read Evan Price, branch manager. He had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, polite on the surface, sizing her up underneath. "I'm here to speak with someone about account services," Nia said evenly. Evan's gaze flicked over her. Navy blazer, simple blouse, flats, no designer bag, no jewelry beyond a modest watch. His smile thinned just slightly. "Of course," he said. "Do you have an appointment?" "I don't." Evan glanced toward the desk where May was still helping another customer. "We're a little busy this afternoon. Walk-ins can take a while. You might want to try one of our neighborhood branches. They tend to have shorter wait times." It was smoothly done, polite enough that it didn't sound like an insult, but Nia heard it for what it was. "You don't look like you belong here." She didn't react. Not yet. "I'll wait," she said simply. Evan's smile flickered. "Sure. Have a seat over there." He gestured toward the waiting area, then turned on his heel and walked back toward his office like the conversation was over. Nia moved to one of the leather chairs and sat down. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, and started typing. Branch, downtown 5th and Merchant. Manager, Evan Price. Initial interaction, dismissive. Redirected without cause. She didn't look up, didn't make a scene, just waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. May finished with her customer and glanced over at Nia, then toward Evan's office. She hesitated, then walked over. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the wait. How can I help you today?" Nia looked up. May's expression was genuinely apologetic. That was something. I'd like to discuss some account options, Nia said. Nothing complicated, just a consultation. Of course. Let me just… May. Both women turned. Evan was standing in the doorway of his office, arms crossed. He didn't raise his voice, but there was an edge to it. I've got this one, he said. Why don't you handle the gentleman at window 3? May blinked. I was just… Window 3, please. May's jaw tightened, but she nodded and walked away. Nia watched her go, then turned her attention back to Evan as he approached. Ma'am, Evan said, his tone a shade cooler now. I don't think we're going to be able to help you today. Nia tilted her head slightly. Why is that? Well, frankly, our services here are geared toward high net worth clients. If you're looking for basic checking or savings, one of our other locations would be a better fit. There it was. Out in the open now. Nia didn't move. I didn't say I was looking for basic checking. Evan's smile was gone. Look, I'm trying to save you some time. This branch handles investment portfolios, trust accounts, commercial lending, things that require a certain level of financial standing. I'm sure you understand. I do, Nia said quietly. But I'm not leaving. Evan's expression hardened. He glanced around the lobby. A few customers had started to notice the exchange. One of them, a younger guy in a hoodie, had his phone out, angled toward them. Evan saw it, and instead of de-escalating, he leaned into it. Ma'am, he said, louder now. I'm going to need you to leave. Now. The lobby went quiet. Nia stayed seated. On what grounds? On the grounds that you're disrupting our business. I'm sitting in a chair. You're refusing to follow instructions from a branch manager. I'm a customer. I have every right to be here. Evan's face flushed. He turned toward the security desk near the entrance. Hector, could you come here, please? A broad-shouldered man in a gray uniform looked up from his post. Hector Rivera. Nia recognized the name from the employee roster. He'd been with the bank for 6 years. Clean record. No complaints. Hector walked over slowly, his eyes moving between Evan and Nia. What's going on? Hector asked. This woman is refusing to leave, Evan said. I need you to escort her out. Hector frowned. He looked at Nia. She met his gaze calmly, still seated, hands folded in her lap. Ma'am, Hector said carefully. Is there a problem? No, Nia said. I'm waiting to speak with someone about account services. That's all. Hector turned to Evan. She hasn't done anything wrong. I'm the branch manager, Evan snapped, and I'm telling you to remove her. Hector hesitated. Around them, more phones were coming out. The guy in the hoodie had his camera up and running. A woman near the ATM was recording too. The footage was already live. May had stopped what she was doing and was watching from behind the teller line, her face pale. Evan saw the cameras. And instead of backing down, he doubled down. This is exactly the kind of thing that makes our clients uncomfortable, Evan said, projecting now for the growing audience. We have standards here. We have protocols. And when someone refuses to respect that, we have every right to protect our environment. Nia finally stood, slowly, gracefully. She adjusted the strap of her bag and looked Evan directly in the eye. What protocol? She asked quietly. Did I violate? Evan sputtered. You're being disruptive. I'm standing in a bank lobby. That's disruptive? You don't have an account here. How do you know that? Evan faltered. I manage this branch. I know my clients. All of them? The ones who matter. The lobby was dead silent now. Even the teller stations had stopped moving. Every eye was on them. Nia reached into her bag. Evan tensed. Hector shifted his weight. She pulled out her phone. I'm going to make a call, Nia said calmly, and then we'll see who belongs here. Evan laughed, actually laughed. Go ahead. Call whoever you want. Corporate, a lawyer. Good luck. I've been with this bank for 3 years. I've turned this branch into one of the top performers in the region. You think one phone call is going to, Nia tapped a number, put the phone to her ear. It rang once. This is Nia Caldwell, she said. Her voice was calm, measured. But there was steel underneath. Code 7, Downtown Branch. 5th and Merchant. Now. She hung up. Evan stared at her. What the hell is code 7? Nia didn't answer. She just checked her watch and then looked back at him. You've got about 90 seconds, she said. Evan's confidence wavered, just a flicker. But it was there. May had her phone out now, typing furiously. Her face had gone from pale to ashen. The guy in the hoodie kept recording. Somewhere in the back of the lobby, a door opened. And then the front doors burst open. A man in a charcoal suit practically ran into the lobby. He was in his 50s, graying at the temples, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. His name tag read Daniel Mercer, Regional Vice President. He stopped in the middle of the floor, spotted Nia, and his face went white. Dr. Caldwell, he said, his voice tight. I didn't know you were... Evan's mouth fell open. Daniel walked straight past him, straight to Nia, and extended his hand. I am so sorry. If I had known you were visiting today, I would have... You would have what, Daniel? Nia asked quietly. Made sure I was treated with respect, or made sure I never saw what actually happens here? Daniel swallowed hard. He glanced at Evan, then at Hector, then at the phone still recording. May was staring at her screen, her hand over her mouth. Nia looked at her. Find something interesting, May? May's voice shook. You're the founder? Nia nodded. I am. May scrolled down. And the CEO. That too. May's eyes went wide. And the controlling shareholder. 72%, Nia confirmed. Give or take. The lobby was frozen. Evan looked like someone had just pulled the floor out from under him. Nia turned to him. You wanted to know if I had an account here, she said softly. I don't. I have all of them. Evan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Nia glanced at Daniel. Conference room, now, and bring the footage. Yes, ma'am. She looked at May. You too. May nodded, still shell-shocked. Nia turned to Hector. Thank you for not putting your hands on me. Hector nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. Nia walked toward the back of the branch, her steps measured and calm. Daniel scrambled to keep up. May followed a few paces behind, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Evan stood in the middle of the lobby, surrounded by cameras, his face the color of old paper. The guy in the hoodie was still recording. And somewhere on the internet, the video was already going viral. Upstairs in the glass-walled conference room that overlooked the lobby, Nia set her bag down on the polished table and turned to face Daniel. How long has he been manager here? She asked. Daniel was still catching his breath. Evan, about 18 months? And his performance reviews? Excellent, top tier. He's brought in more high-value clients than any other branch manager in the region. By doing what exactly? Daniel hesitated. He's aggressive, focused. He knows how to close. He knows how to profile, Nia said flatly. And you rewarded him for it. Daniel flinched. You didn't ask how he was doing it. You just looked at the numbers. May was standing near the door, silent, her arms wrapped around herself. Nia turned to her. How long have you been assistant manager? 6 months, May said quietly. And how many times have you seen Evan do something like this? May's throat worked. I don't know. A few. Maybe more. Did you report it? May's eyes filled. I tried. Once. I went to HR. They said he was a top performer, that I needed to focus on supporting the branch, not undermining management. Nia's jaw tightened. She looked at Daniel. HR said that? Daniel looked away. Nia pulled out her phone and opened the compliance database. She scrolled through incident reports, complaints, escalations. It took her less than 30 seconds to find what she was looking for. 3 complaints in the last year, all against Evan, all dismissed as customer misunderstandings or communication style differences. She set the phone down on the table. Daniel, she said quietly, you're going to pull every piece of footage from this branch for the last 6 months. Every interaction Evans had with a walk-in customer, every conversation at the desk, every dismissal. I want a full audit by Friday. Yes, ma'am. And you're going to sit down with May and write up a formal report on what happened today, every detail, No spin, no justifications. Understood. Nia turned to May. You're not being punished, but you are going on probation, mandatory bias training, monthly check-ins with compliance. If you see something like this again and you don't report it directly to me, you're done. Understood? May nodded, wiping her eyes. Yes, ma'am? Good. Nia picked up her bag. Now let's go deal with Evan. Shuts. When they came back down to the lobby, Evan was still standing in the same spot. The customers had cleared out. The phones were down. But the damage was done. Nia walked up to him. Mr. Price, she said. Evan straightened, trying to pull himself together. Dr. Caldwell, I didn't realize that I was the owner or that I was a human being. Evan's face went red. I was trying to maintain standards. Whose standards? The bank's. No, Nia said. Yours. You decided I didn't belong here based on how I looked. You escalated without cause. You called security on a woman sitting quietly in a chair, and you did it loud enough to make sure everyone saw. You thought wrong. Evan's hands clenched at his sides. I've built this branch. I've brought in millions. You've built a culture of cruelty, Nia cut him off. And you've taught your team that numbers matter more than people. That's not what this bank stands for. Evan's voice rose. I was doing my job. Your job, Nia said quietly, was to serve every customer with dignity. You failed. She turned to Daniel. He's done. Clear his office. Escort him out. Evan's eyes went wide. You can't. I can, Nia said. And I am. Daniel stepped forward. Evan, you're being terminated for cause, effective immediately. You'll receive severance as outlined in your contract, but your access is revoked as of now. Evan looked around wildly, like someone might step in to save him. No one did. Hector was standing by the door waiting. Evan looked back at Nia one last time. This isn't fair. No, Nia agreed. It's not, but it's necessary. And with that, she walked away. That night, the video hit 1 million views. By morning, it was at 10 million. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded. Metropolitan Trust trended for 3 days straight. Some people called it justice. Others called it a PR stunt. A few armchair lawyers debated whether Evan had grounds to sue. Nia didn't respond to any of it. She had work to do. The conference room on the 3rd floor of Metropolitan Trust's headquarters building had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Nia stood at one of them now, her arms crossed, watching the morning traffic crawl through the downtown grid. Behind her, the long table was filling up with people who didn't want to be there. Daniel Mercer sat closest to the head of the table, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. He'd been up most of the night pulling footage and compiling reports. Next to him was Karen Lassiter, the Chief Human Resources Officer, a woman in her mid-50s with steel gray hair and a reputation for protecting the institution at all costs. Across from them sat Marcus Chen, the Chief Operating Officer, and 2 members of the legal team who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Nia turned from the window and took her seat at the head of the table. She didn't say good morning, she didn't offer coffee. She just opened her laptop, connected it to the projector, and pulled up the footage from the downtown branch. I'm going to show you what happened yesterday, Nia said, and then we're going to talk about what happens next. She hit play. The footage started with a wide-angle view of the lobby. Timestamp, 2:04 p.m. Nia walked through the front doors, glanced around, and moved toward the customer service desk. The quality was good, clear audio, high definition, every word, every gesture captured. Evan appeared on screen. The exchange was polite at first. Then it wasn't. Nia watched the faces around the table as the video played. Daniel looked like he wanted to crawl under the furniture. Karen's expression was carefully neutral. Marcus was taking notes. The lawyers exchanged glances. The footage continued. Evan raising his voice, Hector hesitating, May trying to intervene and being shut down, the phones coming out, the live stream starting, and then Nia making the call. When the video ended, the room was silent. Nia closed her laptop. That footage has been viewed 17 million times as of an hour ago. It's on every major news outlet, It's trending on 4 different platforms, and it's being used as a case study in business ethics classes at 3 universities I know of, probably more by now. Karen cleared her throat. With all due respect, Dr. Caldwell, terminating Evan on the spot may have been premature. We could be looking at a wrongful termination suit. His performance reviews were exemplary. Nia's gaze didn't waver. His performance reviews rewarded him for bringing in high net worth clients. They didn't ask how he was doing it. They didn't measure whether he was turning away people who didn't fit his profile. They didn't track complaints. And when May reported concerns, your department dismissed them. Karen stiffened. We followed protocol. The complaints were investigated. By who? By regional HR. And who did regional HR report to? Karen hesitated. Daniel's office? Nia looked at Daniel. And you signed off on closing those complaints because Evan's numbers were good. Daniel rubbed his face. I thought they were isolated incidents, miscommunications. 3 complaints in 1 year isn't isolated, Nia said. It's a pattern. And the fact that no one flagged it tells me we have a systemic problem. Marcus leaned forward. What do you want to do? Nia pulled up a spreadsheet on the projector. It showed incident reports from all 47 branches over the last 3 years. She'd spent half the night building it. Complaints categorized by type, dismissive service, profiling, escalations, denials without cause. The numbers were worse than she'd expected. This isn't just one branch, Nia said. This is happening everywhere. We've built a culture that prioritizes metrics over people, and it's going to stop. Karen frowned. You're talking about a complete overhaul. I'm talking about accountability. One of the lawyers spoke up. Dr. Caldwell, any major policy shift right now is going to look reactive, like we're trying to cover up a PR disaster. Nia turned to him. We're not covering up anything. We're fixing what's broken. And if it looks reactive, that's because it should have been proactive 3 years ago. She clicked to the next slide. It was a framework, a blueprint. The Caldwell Standard, she'd titled it. Mandatory bias training for all client-facing employees, monthly audits of branch interactions, real-time monitoring of complaint trends, a direct reporting line to her office for escalations that bypassed regional management, and zero-tolerance enforcement. This rolls out in 30 days, Nia said. Every branch, every employee, no exceptions. Karen shook her head. That's not enough time. We'd need to coordinate with training vendors, update systems, get buy-in from regional managers. Then you'd better get started, Nia said. Because in 31 days, I'm going to start visiting branches unannounced. And if I see anything like what I saw yesterday, heads are going to roll, starting with yours. The room went cold. Marcus broke the silence. What about the media? What about them? They're going to want a statement, an explanation. They're going to ask if this is widespread. Then we tell them the truth, Nia said. We've found a problem, we're fixing it, and we're not hiding. Karen looked uneasy. That's a risk. So is doing nothing. Nia stood. I want a full communications plan on my desk by end of day. I want the training modules ready for review by Friday. And I want a list of every regional manager who's signed off on dismissing complaints without investigation. We're going to have some very direct conversations. She picked up her laptop and headed for the door. Daniel called after her. Dr. Caldwell, what about Evan? If he sues... Nia paused in the doorway. Let him. I'll take that deposition myself. And then she was gone. Again, 2 floors down, May Park sat in a small conference room across from a woman named Dr. Sharonda Hayes, a consulting psychologist who specialized in workplace bias training. Sharonda had kind eyes and a calm voice, but May felt like she was sitting in front of a judge. This isn't a punishment, Sharonda said gently. This is a chance to reset. May nodded, but her hands were shaking in her lap. Sharonda opened a notebook. Tell me what happened yesterday. In your own words. May took a breath. I saw her come in. Dr. Caldwell. I didn't know who she was, but she looked normal, like a regular customer. She went to the desk and Evan intercepted her. I was helping someone else, so I didn't hear the whole conversation at first. But then I saw him directing her to the waiting area, and something felt off. What felt off? The way he looked at her, like he'd already decided she didn't matter. Sharonda wrote something down. And what did you do? I finished with my customer and went over to help her. But Evan stopped me. He said he'd handle it. He told me to go help someone else. Did you push back? May's voice dropped. No. Why not? May's eyes filled. Because he's my boss. Because the last time I questioned him, I got shut down. Because I reported him once and nothing happened, and I didn't want to make it worse. Sharonda set down her pen. May, you're not responsible for Evan's behavior, but you are responsible for yours. And part of being in leadership, even assistant leadership, is knowing when to escalate, even when it's uncomfortable. I know, May whispered. I know I should have done more. So why didn't you? May looked up, tears streaming down her face. Because I was scared. Because I'm 28 years old and this is the first real job I've had where I actually matter, and I didn't want to lose it. Because Evan had the numbers and the reviews and everyone loved him, and I thought maybe I was wrong. Sharonda reached across the table and handed her a tissue. You weren't wrong. Your instincts were right, but your fear kept you quiet, and that's what we're going to work on. May wiped her eyes. Dr. Caldwell said I'm on probation. She also said you're not being punished. There's a difference. Probation means you're being given a chance to grow, to learn how to use your voice when it matters most. Do you understand that? May nodded slowly. Good, Sharonda said. Because the next time you see something wrong, I need you to speak up. Even if it costs you. Especially if it costs you, because that's what integrity looks like. May sat with that for a long moment. Then she asked, what if I see it again and no one listens? Sharonda smiled faintly. Then you go higher. You keep going until someone does. And if that someone is Dr. Caldwell herself, you call her directly. She gave you that option for a reason. May let out a shaky breath. Okay. Okay, Sharonda echoed. Now let's talk about what happened after Evan called security. Well, across town, in a cramped studio apartment with barely enough room for a bed and a desk, the guy in the hoodie, his name was Tyler Nguyen, sat at his laptop editing the footage he'd captured. The original live stream had blown up overnight, but Tyler had kept recording even after Nia left the lobby. He'd caught Evan's face as the reality sank in. He'd filmed Daniel's panicked arrival. He'd even captured a few reactions from other customers as they pieced together what had just happened. Now he was cutting it all together into a follow-up video. His commentary was sharp, his editing tight. Tyler had been making social justice content for 3 years, mostly covering local news that mainstream outlets ignored. But this was different. This was David and Goliath in a business suit. He uploaded the video with a simple title, The CEO They Tried to Kick Out. What happened next? Within 2 hours, it had 500,000 views. Tyler's phone started ringing. News producers, podcast hosts, a literary agent who thought there might be a book in this. He ignored most of them. But one call stood out. It was from Nia Caldwell's office. Nia sat across from Tyler 3 days later in a coffee shop 2 blocks from Metropolitan Trust headquarters. She'd chosen the location deliberately, public, neutral, no power dynamics. Tyler had shown up 15 minutes early, visibly nervous, clutching his phone like a lifeline. Nia ordered a black coffee. Tyler got something with too much caramel. You're not in trouble, Nia said, watching him relax slightly. I wanted to thank you. Tyler blinked. For what? For recording what happened, for not editing it to make it more dramatic than it was, for telling the truth. Tyler shifted in his seat. I saw what was happening and I knew people needed to see it. Stuff like that happens all the time. People just don't usually catch it on camera. How often do you see it? Tyler thought about that. More than you'd think. It's not always that blatant. Sometimes it's just the way someone's voice changes when they're talking to a person of color. Or the way a security guard follows someone around a store for no reason. Or the way a manager suddenly can't help someone who doesn't look like their usual clientele. It's small, but it adds up. Nia nodded slowly. I want to hire you. Tyler almost dropped his coffee. What? I'm building a monitoring program, real-time observation of branch interactions. I need people who know what to look for. People who aren't afraid to call it out. You've got the eye, and you've got the guts. Tyler stared at her. You want me to work for Metropolitan Trust? I want you to work for accountability. The paycheck just happens to come from the bank. Tyler was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What if I see something and you don't like it? Then we fix it, Nia said simply. That's the whole point. And if it's someone high up, someone who brings in a lot of money? Nia leaned forward. Tyler, I didn't fire Evan because he embarrassed me. I fired him because he treated people like they were disposable. If someone at the executive level does the same thing, they're gone too. I don't care how much money they make. I don't care how long they've been here. Dignity isn't negotiable. Tyler searched her face. Whatever he saw there seemed to convince him. Okay, he said. I'm in. Back at headquarters, Karen Lassiter was having the worst week of her career. She'd been with Metropolitan Trust for 12 years. She'd built the HR department from a skeleton crew into a fully staffed operation. She'd implemented policies, streamlined processes, and insulated the bank from dozens of potential lawsuits. And now Nia Caldwell was systematically dismantling everything she'd built. Karen sat in her office, staring at the list Nia had demanded. Every regional manager who'd signed off on dismissing complaints, every HR rep who'd failed to escalate, every branch that had a pattern of incidents. The list was long. And Karen's name was on it. She picked up her phone and called her mentor, a retired executive who'd helped her navigate corporate politics for years. She's cleaning house, Karen said when he answered, and I think I'm next. Her mentor was silent for a moment. Then he said, What did you do? I followed protocol. I protected the institution. From what? From liability, from bad press, from employees who didn't understand how things work. And how do things work, Karen? She hesitated. You prioritize the people who matter. And who decides who matters? Karen didn't answer. Her mentor sighed. You know what your problem is? You forgot that the institution isn't the buildings or the accounts or the quarterly reports. It's the people, all of them. And when you start deciding some people matter more than others, you're not protecting the institution, you're corrupting it. Karen felt something crack inside her chest. So what do I do? You own it, he said. You walk into her office, you tell her you were wrong, and you ask her what she needs from you to make it right. And if she fires you anyway, you leave with your integrity intact. Karen hung up. She sat there for a long time, staring at the list. Then she stood up, smoothed her skirt, and walked to Nia's office. Nia looked up when Karen appeared in her doorway. She didn't invite her in. She just waited. I need to talk to you, Karen said. Nia gestured to the chair across from her desk. Karen sat. I reviewed the complaints, Karen began. All of them. And I need to tell you something. Nia folded her hands and listened. I was wrong, Karen said. The words felt like stones in her mouth. I prioritize protecting the bank's reputation over protecting the people the bank is supposed to serve. I dismissed complaints because the people making them didn't have enough money or influence to matter. I told myself I was being pragmatic, but I was just being a coward. Nia didn't respond immediately. She just watched Karen with those calm, assessing eyes. What do you want me to do about it? Nia asked finally. I don't know, Karen admitted. Fire me, if that's what you think is right. But if you're willing to give me a chance, I want to help fix this. I want to rebuild HR the way it should have been, from the start. Nia leaned back in her chair. If I keep you, you don't get to hide behind protocol anymore. You don't get to dismiss complaints because they're inconvenient. And if I find out you've prioritized optics over ethics even once, you're done. No second chances. Do you understand? Karen nodded. I understand. Good, Nia said. Then get to work. I want a new complaint escalation system on my desk by Monday. One that goes directly to compliance, not through regional management. And I want every HR rep retrained on what accountability actually looks like. Karen stood. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Nia said. You've got a lot to prove. Karen left the office feeling lighter than she had in years. That evening, Nia sat alone in her house. A modest two-story in a quiet neighborhood, nothing like the mansion people assumed she lived in. She poured herself a glass of wine and pulled up the news on her tablet. The story was still everywhere. Analysts were dissecting the bank's stock performance. Social media was debating whether she'd gone too far or not far enough. A few business schools had already reached out to ask if she'd be willing to speak about leadership and accountability. Nia set the tablet down and looked out the window at her small backyard. The grass needed mowing. The fence needed painting. Normal things. Mundane things. She thought about Evan, about May, about Karen, about all the people who'd built careers on deciding who mattered and who didn't. And she thought about the customers who'd walked into her branches over the years and been turned away for reasons that had nothing to do with their accounts and everything to do with someone else's assumptions. This wasn't just about one bad manager. It was about a system that had allowed him to thrive. And Nia was going to dismantle that system piece by piece, no matter how long it took. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Training modules ready for review. Compliance team briefed. Monitoring system in development. We're moving. Nia texted back. Good. Keep going. She set the phone down, finished her wine, and went to bed. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. The real work began on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after the incident, when Nia walked into the downtown branch unannounced for the second time. The lobby looked different now. Cleaner, somehow, though nothing physical had changed. The marble was the same. The brass logo still hung on the wall. But the energy had shifted. A new branch manager stood behind the customer service desk. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, a 15-year veteran who'd been managing the branch in the suburbs and had a reputation for running a tight ship without running over people. Patricia looked up when Nia walked in, recognized her immediately, and simply nodded a greeting before returning to the customer she was helping. No fanfare, no panic, just professionalism. Nia took a seat in the waiting area and watched. A young couple approached the desk. They looked nervous, dressed in their Sunday best, even though it was a weekday. The woman clutched a folder of documents. The man kept glancing around like he expected someone to tell them they were in the wrong place. Patricia finished with her previous customer and turned to them with a warm smile. Good morning. How can I help you folks today? The woman stepped forward. We're looking to open a business account. We're starting a catering company. Patricia's smile widened. That's wonderful. Congratulations. Let me get some information from you and we'll see what options might work best. She pulled up a chair for them, offered water, asked about their business plan, not like she was interrogating them, but like she was genuinely interested. The couple relaxed, started talking. Within 10 minutes, they were laughing about a story involving a wedding cake disaster that had inspired them to start their own business. Nia watched Patricia guide them through the account options, explaining fees and requirements without talking down to them, answering questions without making them feel stupid for asking. When the couple mentioned they weren't sure they had enough capital to qualify for certain services, Patricia didn't shut them down. She walked them through alternatives, suggested a timeline for building up to the accounts they wanted, and gave them her card with a handwritten note on the back. Call me in 6 months. Let's see where you are. The couple left smiling. Patricia turned and saw Nia watching. She walked over. Dr. Caldwell, Patricia said quietly, I didn't know you were coming by. That's the point, Nia replied. How's it going? Patricia glanced around the lobby. First week's been an adjustment. The staff's still getting used to the new protocols. Some of them are nervous, a few are resistant, but we're making progress. What kind of resistance? Patricia chose her words carefully. There's a mindset that's been here a long time. The idea that certain customers are worth more attention than others. Some of the senior tellers still sort people in their heads before they even open their mouths. It's subtle, but it's there. And what are you doing about it? I'm watching. I'm correcting in the moment when I see it, and I'm documenting everything so if someone doesn't change, we have a record. Patricia paused. I'm also making it clear that I'm watching them the same way they're watching customers. They don't get to hide behind seniority anymore. Nia nodded. Good. Keep me posted. Patricia hesitated. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you just clean house, fire everyone who worked under Evan and start fresh? Nia considered that. Because most of them aren't the problem. They're products of the culture Evan created. Some of them can unlearn it, some of them can't. But they deserve the chance to try. Patricia looked at her for a long moment. That's more generous than I would have been. It's not generosity. Nia said. It's pragmatism. I need people who know how this place works. I just need them to work differently. She stood and headed for the door. Halfway there, she turned back. Patricia, that couple you just helped, follow up with them in 3 months. See how their business is going. And if they're ready to expand their accounts, make it happen. Patricia smiled. Yes, ma'am. Nia left feeling something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But hope wasn't enough to fix everything, and Nia knew it. 2 days later, she was sitting in a video conference with the compliance team going through incident reports from the other branches. Tyler Nguyen was on the call, his screen split between camera and a shared spreadsheet he'd built to track patterns. We've got a problem in the Riverside branch, Tyler said, highlighting a row of data. 3 complaints in 2 weeks, all from women, all involving the same loan officer. Nia leaned forward. What's the pattern? Tyler pulled up notes. He's asking questions that have nothing to do with their applications. Marital status when they're applying individually, whether they have kids. One woman said he asked if her husband knew she was there. The compliance officer on the call, a sharp woman named India Ross, made a note. That's a clear violation. Those questions can be used to discriminate based on family status. Is he denying loans based on the answers? Nia asked. At this, Tyler scrolled through more data. Not outright, but he's steering women toward smaller credit lines and higher interest rates than similarly qualified men. The approvals are technically within policy, but the pattern's obvious once you look at it. Nia felt the familiar tightness in her chest. This was what she'd been afraid of. Evan had been loud and obvious, but most discrimination wasn't. Most of it was quiet, coded, buried under layers of plausible deniability. India, I want you at Riverside tomorrow, Nia said. Pull his files for the last 6 months. Compare approval rates and terms by gender. If the pattern holds, he's done. India nodded. And if he pushes back, let him. I'll handle it personally. The call ended. Nia sat back in her chair and rubbed her temples. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus Chen. Board meeting moved up to Thursday. They want to discuss the financial impact of the new protocols. Of course they did. The boardroom was on the top floor of headquarters, all dark wood and leather chairs and windows that looked out over the city like a reminder of how high up you'd climbed. Nia had sat in this room 1,000 times over the years. She'd built this bank from nothing, and most of the people around this table owed their positions to her vision. But that didn't mean they were happy with her right now. She took her seat at the head of the table and looked around. 12 board members. Half of them she'd personally recruited. The other half represented investor groups and institutional stakeholders. They all had the same expression, concerned, skeptical, waiting for her to justify what she'd done. The chairman, a silver-haired man named Robert Calloway, who'd been with the bank since the beginning, spoke first. Nia, we appreciate your commitment to addressing what happened at the downtown branch, but we're looking at some concerning numbers. Customer complaints are up 40% across all locations. Processing times are longer. Several high-value clients have expressed concerns about the new monitoring systems. And we've lost 2 regional managers who felt the new protocols were overreach. Nia didn't blink. The complaints are up because we're actually tracking them now. Before they were being dismissed or buried. Processing times are longer because we're making sure every customer gets the same level of attention, not just the ones who look profitable. And the regional managers we lost were the ones signing off on discrimination. I don't consider that a loss. Another board member, a woman named Judith Park, who represented a major investment firm, leaned forward. But what about the bottom line? We're projecting a 3% revenue decline this quarter. That's directly tied to the changes you've implemented. Short term, Nia said. Yes, we're taking a hit. We're turning away business that was built on exclusionary practices. We're investing in training and compliance infrastructure. But long term, we're building a sustainable model that doesn't depend on treating people like commodities. Robert sighed. Nia, no one's arguing against treating people well, but there's a balance. We have shareholders to answer to. If we keep losing revenue, then we'll lose revenue. Nia cut him off. Her voice was calm but unyielding. I didn't build this bank to maximize quarterly profits. I built it to serve communities. And if we can't do that with integrity, then we shouldn't be doing it at all. The room went quiet. Judith spoke again, softer this time. You're asking us to trust that this will pay off, but we don't have evidence yet, just projections and principles. Nia opened her laptop and pulled up a presentation. She'd been working on it for days, knowing this conversation was coming. Here's your evidence, she said, clicking to the first slide. It showed customer retention rates over the past month. They were up. Not by much, but they were moving in the right direction. People are noticing the changes, Nia continued. We're getting positive press for the first time in years. Applications for new accounts are up 18%. And we're attracting customers who've been actively avoiding big banks because they didn't think they'd be treated fairly. She clicked to the next slide. Employee satisfaction scores, also up. Morale is improving. The people who wanted to work in a place with standards are thriving. The ones who wanted to cut corners are gone. And our turnover rate for quality employees is the lowest it's been in 5 years. Another slide. Community partnerships. Local businesses that were opening accounts. Nonprofits that were moving their funds to Metropolitan Trust because they believed in what the bank was trying to do. This isn't just about revenue, Nia said. It's about reputation. It's about building something that lasts. And yes, it's going to cost us in the short term. But if you want a bank that's still standing in 20 years, this is how we get there. Robert studied the data. So did Judith. The rest of the board was silent, weighing their options. Finally, Robert spoke. How long do you need? 6 months, Nia said. Give me 6 months to show you this works. If the numbers don't improve by then, we'll revisit. Judith looked at Robert. Some unspoken conversation passed between them. Then Judith turned back to Nia. 6 months, she agreed, but we'll be watching closely. I'd expect nothing less, Nia said. The meeting adjourned. Nia packed up her laptop and headed for the door. Robert caught up with her in the hallway. You know you're betting everything on this, he said quietly. I know. And if it doesn't work, they'll replace you. Nia looked at him. Robert, if it doesn't work, I'll replace myself. I'm not interested in running a bank that profits from cruelty. I'd rather go down fighting for something better. Robert studied her face. Then he smiled faintly. You always were the most stubborn person I've ever met. That's why you backed me in the first place. True enough. He clapped her on the shoulder. Good luck, Nia. You're going to need it. Luck came in unexpected forms. 3 days after the board meeting, Nia got a call from a reporter at a major business magazine. They wanted to do a feature story on the Caldwell Standard and what it meant for the banking industry. Nia almost said no. She didn't want this to be about her. But Marcus convinced her that the right kind of press could shift the narrative. So she agreed. The interview took place in her office. The reporter, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s named Aisha Patel, came prepared with tough questions. Some critics say this is performative, Aisha began. That you're only making these changes because you got caught on camera. Nia didn't flinch. I've been making changes my entire career. But you're right that the incident forced me to confront how deep the problem went. Sometimes it takes a public moment to see what's been happening in private. Are you saying you didn't know your branches were profiling customers? I'm saying I knew it was possible, and I should have been more vigilant. That's on me. Aisha made a note. You fired Evan Price on the spot. Some employment lawyers say that was risky. Do you regret it? No. Why not? Because keeping him would have sent a message that numbers matter more than people. And I refuse to run a bank on that principle. Aisha leaned forward. But isn't that what banks do? Prioritize profit? Nia met her gaze. It's what some banks do. It's not what mine is going to do anymore. The interview went on for another hour. Aisha asked about the financial impact, the board's reaction, the long-term sustainability of the Caldwell Standard. Nia answered every question honestly, even the ones that made her uncomfortable. When it was over, Aisha closed her notebook and looked at Nia with something like respect. Off the record, Aisha said, I've covered a lot of corporate scandals. Usually the executives spend the whole time making excuses or blaming low-level employees. You didn't do that. Because it wouldn't be true, Nia said. This problem started at the top, with policies that rewarded the wrong things and leaders who didn't pay attention. I'm one of those leaders, and I'm fixing it. Aisha nodded. I think people are going to listen. The article came out 2 weeks later. It was fair, thorough, and surprisingly positive. It framed the Caldwell Standard not as damage control, but as a genuine attempt to rethink how banks operate. Within days, other institutions were calling to ask about the program. Business schools wanted case studies. Advocacy groups wanted to partner on implementation. The story was spreading, and with it, the pressure to succeed. Not everyone was convinced. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Nia got a call from her attorney, a seasoned litigator named Paul DeLuca, who'd been with her since the early days. "We've got a problem," Paul said without preamble. "Evan's filing suit." Nia had been expecting this. "On what grounds?" "Wrongful termination. He's claiming you fired him without due process, that his performance reviews were exemplary, and that the termination was retaliatory." Retaliatory for what? For maintaining professional standards, apparently. His lawyer's arguing that you only fired him because the video went viral and you needed a scapegoat. Nia almost laughed. He called security on a customer who was sitting quietly in a chair. That's not maintaining standards, that's abuse of authority. I know that, you know that. But his lawyer's going to argue that he was following protocols to protect the branch environment and that your decision was influenced by public pressure, not actual misconduct. Nia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When's the deposition?" 3 weeks. But Nia, we can settle this. Offer him a year's severance, a neutral reference, and he goes away quietly. No, Paul sighed. This is going to be messy. He'll drag the bank's name through the mud. He'll paint himself as a victim. The media will eat it up. Let them, Nia said. I'm not paying him to go away. If he wants to make this public, we'll make it public. Every complaint that was filed against him, every customer he turned away, every employee he silenced. I'll take the stand myself if I have to. Paul was silent for a long moment. You're sure about this? Completely. All right, Paul said. Then we fight. Nia hung up and stared out the window. The rain was coming down harder now, streaking the glass and blurring the city below. She thought about Evan, about the customers he'd humiliated, about May, who'd been too scared to speak up because people like Evan always seemed to win. Not this time. That evening, Nia drove out to the Riverside branch where India Ross had been conducting her investigation. She wanted to see the problem firsthand before making any decisions. India met her in the parking lot, holding an umbrella and a thick folder of documentation. It's worse than we thought, India said as they walked inside. 23 loan applications from women over the last 6 months. 18 of them were steered toward higher rates or lower credit lines than comparable male applicants. And the questions he's been asking are textbook discrimination. They sat in an empty office while India walked her through the files. Each one told the same story. Qualified women applying for business loans or personal credit, and a loan officer named Derek Finch asking invasive questions about their families, their marital status, their plans for children, then systematically offering them worse terms than he offered men with identical financial profiles. Nia read through one application, a woman named Sandra Ortiz who'd applied for a small business loan to expand her bakery. Derek had approved her, but at an interest rate 2 points higher than a male applicant with a lower credit score and less collateral. Where is he now? Nia asked. In his office, India said. I told him you wanted to speak with him. Nia stood. Let's go. Derek Finch was in his early 40s, clean-cut and confident, sitting behind his desk like he didn't have a care in the world. He stood when Nia and India entered, extending his hand. Dr. Caldwell, it's an honor. I've heard so much about the work you're doing. Nia didn't shake his hand. She sat down across from him. India remained standing by the door. Mr. Finch, Nia began, do you know why I'm here? Derek's smile faltered slightly. I assume it's about the new compliance protocols. I've been reviewing them and I'm fully on board. It's not about the protocols, Nia said. It's about your conduct. Derek's expression shifted, confusion mixed with defensiveness. I'm not sure what you mean. Nia opened the folder and slid Sandra Ortiz's application across the desk. This woman applied for a business loan 3 months ago. You approved her at 6.2% interest. Do you remember her? Derek glanced at the file. Vaguely, I process a lot of applications. 2 weeks before her, a man named Michael Torres applied for a similar loan, same credit score, less collateral. You approved him at 4.1%. Why the difference? Derek shifted in his seat. Every application is evaluated individually. There are multiple factors. What factors justified a 2-point spread? I'd have to review the full files to give you a detailed answer. Nia pulled out another application, then another, then another. Each one showed the same pattern. Women getting worse terms than men. Questions about family status that had no bearing on creditworthiness. Mr. Finch, Nia said quietly, you've been discriminating against female applicants for at least 6 months, and you've been doing it systematically. Derek's face went red. That's not true. I treat everyone fairly. If there are discrepancies, they're based on legitimate risk assessments. Then explain to me why you asked Sandra Ortiz if her husband supported her business decision. Derek froze. Or why you asked Maria Chen if she was planning to have children in the next few years. Derek's mouth opened, closed. Those were just conversational questions, rapport building. They're illegal questions, Nia said, and they're grounds for termination. Derek stood abruptly. You can't fire me for making conversation. I'm firing you for using that conversation to discriminate, and if you'd like to challenge that, you're welcome to. But I have 23 documented cases of you treating women differently than men. I'll see you in court if necessary. Derek looked at India, then back at Nia. The confidence drained out of him. I need this job, he said quietly. You should have thought of that before you decided some customers mattered less than others, Nia replied. She stood and handed him a termination letter that India had prepared. You're done, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Derek took the letter with shaking hands. India opened the door and nodded to a security officer waiting in the hall. As Derek was led out, Nia stayed behind in the office. She looked at the files spread across the desk. 23 women. 23 moments where someone had been judged not on their merits but on their gender. And Derek had probably told himself he was just being thorough, just doing his job. That's how it always started. And that's why it had to stop. By the time Nia got home that night, she was exhausted. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her back porch, listening to the rain. Her phone buzzed with messages. Updates from Patricia, a note from Marcus about the press coverage, a text from Tyler saying he'd found another pattern in the data that needed attention. It never stopped. Every branch she fixed revealed 2 more that needed work. Every person she held accountable exposed a dozen others who'd been getting away with the same behavior. The system was broken in so many places that fixing it felt like trying to hold back the ocean with her bare hands. But Nia had built this bank. She'd poured 23 years of her life into it, and she wasn't going to let it become something she was ashamed of. She finished her wine and went inside. Tomorrow, there would be more work, more problems, more people who needed to be held accountable, and she'd be ready. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in a conference room downtown that smelled like old carpet and burnt coffee. Nia arrived 15 minutes early with Paul DeLuca at her side, both of them carrying briefcases that held more ammunition than Evan Price's legal team could possibly anticipate. Evan was already there with his attorney, a sleek man in his 50s named Richard Brennan, who had a reputation for turning workplace disputes into media circuses. Evan looked different than he had that day in the lobby. Thinner, tired. His suit was expensive, but it hung on him like he'd lost weight. When Nia walked in, he didn't meet her eyes. Richard stood and extended his hand to Paul. They shook with the forced politeness of 2 people who'd rather be anywhere else. The court reporter set up her equipment. Everyone took their seats. Richard started with the formalities. Name, position, relationship to the defendant. Then he got to the meat of it. Dr. Caldwell, can you tell me in your own words why you terminated Mr. Price's employment? Nia's voice was steady. Mr. Price violated multiple company policies regarding customer service and professional conduct. He profiled a customer based on appearance, escalated a non-threatening situation without cause, and called security on someone who had every right to be in that branch. And that customer happened to be you. Yes. Isn't it true that you only fired Mr. Price because you were personally embarrassed by the incident going viral? Paul started to object, but Nia held up a hand. No, I fired him because his behavior was unacceptable. The fact that it happened to me just meant I witnessed it firsthand instead of reading about it in a complaint that would have been dismissed. Richard raised an eyebrow. Dismissed? That's a strong accusation. It's a documented pattern. Your client had 3 formal complaints filed against him in the year before this incident. All of them were closed without investigation because his performance metrics were strong. Richard flipped through his notes. Those complaints were determined to be unfounded. They were determined to be inconvenient, Naya corrected. There's a difference. Richard leaned back. Dr. Caldwell, isn't it true that Mr. Price was one of your top-performing branch managers? That he brought in millions of dollars in new business? Yes. And isn't it also true that the downtown branch had the highest customer satisfaction scores in the region under his leadership? Nia smiled thinly. Customer satisfaction scores that were based on surveys sent only to customers who completed transactions. They didn't include the people who were turned away before they ever got that far. Richard's jaw tightened. You're speculating. I'm connecting dots that should have been connected years ago. The deposition went on for 3 hours. Richard tried every angle. He questioned Nia's authority to terminate without a formal review process. He suggested the viral video had clouded her judgment. He implied that the new Caldwell standard was really just an expensive PR campaign to cover up institutional failures. Nia answered every question calmly, precisely, and with receipts. When Richard asked about the financial impact of the new protocols, she pulled out quarterly projections showing recovery trends. When he questioned whether one incident justified termination, she presented the full file of complaints against Evan, complete with timestamps, customer statements, and employee testimonies that had been buried. And when Richard suggested that Evan had been following standard procedures for handling disruptive customers, Nia asked a simple question. What was disruptive about a woman sitting in a chair? Richard didn't have an answer for that. During a break, Paul pulled Nia aside in the hallway. You're doing great. He's got nothing. He's got enough to drag this out, Nia said. That's the whole point. Make it expensive, make it exhausting. Hope I settle just to make it go away. Are you going to? Nia looked through the glass door at Evan, who was hunched over his phone while Richard talked at him in low, urgent tones. No, she said. We're seeing this through. When they reconvened, Richard shifted tactics. Dr. Caldwell, let's talk about the real reason you implemented the Caldwell standard. Which is? You needed to deflect attention from systemic failures in your institution. Failures that existed long before my client worked there. Failures that you, as the founder and CEO, are ultimately responsible for. Nia didn't take the bait. You're right. I am responsible. And that's exactly why I'm fixing it. By scapegoating a dedicated employee who was doing exactly what he'd been trained to do? He wasn't trained to profile customers. He was trained to assess risk, to protect the branch environment, to make judgment calls about who belonged in a high-value financial institution. And who, Nia asked quietly, taught him that some people don't belong? Richard hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. Nia pressed forward. Mr. Price made assumptions about me based on how I looked. He decided I wasn't worth his time because I didn't fit his mental image of a Metropolitan Trust customer. That's not risk assessment, that's discrimination. And if your argument is that he learned that behavior from institutional training, then you're making my case for me. The room went silent except for the court reporter's fingers on the keys. Richard recovered quickly. We'll be filing a motion to compel discovery of all training materials and employee handbooks dating back 5 years. File whatever you want, Nia said. You'll find that none of our official materials authorize the behavior your client engaged in. What you will find is a pattern of managers being rewarded for bringing in revenue without anyone asking how they were doing it, and that's the culture I'm dismantling. The deposition ended shortly after that. Richard packed up his materials with the tight-lipped efficiency of someone who knew he was fighting uphill. Evan stood slowly, looking at Nia one last time. I was good at my job, he said quietly. Nia met his gaze. You were good at the parts that got measured. You failed at the parts that mattered. Evan's face reddened, but he didn't respond. Richard ushered him out. Paul waited until they were alone before letting out a long breath. That was brutal. It needed to be, Nia said. She gathered her files and headed for the elevator. Paul followed. They're going to come back with a settlement offer, Paul said, probably lower than before. They know they're on shaky ground. And when they do, we turn it down again. Nia, I mean it, Paul. This isn't about money. It's about precedent. If we settle, it sends a message that we're not sure we were right, that we're willing to pay to make the problem go away. I'm not doing that. Paul studied her face. You know this could go to trial. Good. Let a jury decide whether what Evan did was acceptable. Let them see the footage. Let them hear from the customers who were turned away. Let them decide whether a bank should operate on the principle that some people matter more than others. Paul nodded slowly. Okay, then we prepare for trial. They rode the elevator down in silence. When they reached the lobby, Nia's phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Board wants an update. Can you come in this afternoon? Nia sighed and texted back. On my way. Mug. The board meeting was smaller this time. Just Robert, Judith, and 2 other members who represented the bank's largest institutional investors. They sat around the conference table with tablets and coffee, their faces carefully neutral. Robert started. We heard the deposition went well. It did, Nia confirmed. Judith leaned forward. But it's still going forward. Price isn't settling. No, and neither are we. One of the institutional investors, a man named Gerald Tisch, who rarely spoke but controlled a significant voting bloc, cleared his throat. Dr. Caldwell, we're 3 months into your 6-month timeline. The numbers are improving, but not fast enough to offset the legal costs and negative attention this lawsuit is generating. The lawsuit is noise, Nia said. The real story is what's happening in the branches. Tell us, Robert said. Nia pulled up a presentation on the screen. Customer retention rates were up 12%. New account applications had increased by 24%. Employee satisfaction scores had climbed into the highest quartile the bank had ever seen. And most tellingly, complaints were down 30% even though reporting mechanisms had improved. People are noticing, Nia said. We're getting applications from customers who specifically cite the Caldwell standard as their reason for switching to us. We're attracting talent from competitors because word's getting out that we actually hold people accountable. And we're rebuilding trust in communities that have been underserved by traditional banking for decades. Judith studied the data. What about the high-value clients who left? We've lost 11 high-net-worth accounts in the last 3 months, Nia admitted. But we've gained 47 new ones. And the new clients are younger, more diverse, and statistically more likely to be long-term customers. Gerald spoke again. That's a bet on the future. It's always been a bet on the future, Nia replied. I didn't build this bank to maximize short-term gains. I built it to last. Robert looked around the table. Questions? Judith had one. What happens if you lose the lawsuit? We won't. But if you do? Nia met her eyes. If we lose, it means a jury decided that what Evan Price did was acceptable business practice. And if that's the world we're operating in, then we need to fight even harder to change it. Judith sat back. You're asking us to trust you. I'm asking you to trust the data, and to trust that doing the right thing eventually becomes the profitable thing. The board members exchanged glances. Some unspoken conversation happened in the looks they gave each other. Finally, Robert spoke. You've got your 6 months, but Nia, if this lawsuit becomes a distraction that damages the brand beyond repair, we're going to have to make hard decisions. Understood, Nia said. The meeting adjourned. As Nia packed up her materials, Judith lingered behind. Can I ask you something off the record? Judith said. Go ahead. Why are you doing this? You could have handled the Evans situation quietly. Severance, NDA, move on. Instead, you've turned it into a crusade that's costing you time, money, and political capital. Why? Nia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Because 23 years ago, I walked into a bank to apply for a business loan. I had a solid plan, good credit, and every qualification I needed. And the loan officer took one look at me and decided I wasn't worth his time. He didn't say it outright. He just made it clear through 1,000 small signals that I didn't belong there. Judith waited. I got my loan eventually, Nia continued, from a different bank, and I built Metropolitan Trust specifically so that no one else would have to go through what I went through. But somewhere along the way, we became the thing I was trying to escape. And when I saw myself in that woman sitting in the lobby, the one who looked like she didn't belong, I realized I'd failed. Not just as a CEO, as a human being. Judith absorbed that. So this is personal. Everything worth doing is personal, Naya said. The question is whether you let that personal stake make you better or bitter. I'm choosing better. Judith nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It's just going to be hard to convince everyone else. I know, Naya said, but I've never been afraid of hard. That evening, Nia visited the downtown branch again. It had become something of a ritual. Once a week, unannounced, just to see how things were running. Patricia had the place humming. The staff was professional. The customers looked relaxed. It felt like a bank should feel. Nia was about to leave when she noticed a woman standing near the entrance, looking uncertain. She was young, maybe mid-20s, wearing scrubs like she'd just come from a hospital shift. She had a folder clutched to her chest and kept glancing at the customer service desk like she was working up the courage to approach. Nia recognized that look. She'd worn it herself once. She walked over. "Can I help you with something?" The woman startled. "Oh, no, yes, I'm trying to decide if I should go in. What's holding you back?" The woman hesitated. "I've been to 3 other banks in the last 2 weeks. They all found reasons why I didn't qualify for what I need, and I don't know if I can handle being turned away again." Nia's chest tightened. "What are you trying to get?" "A small business loan. I'm a nurse, but I want to open a mobile health clinic, serve communities that don't have easy access to healthcare. I've got the plan, the certifications, everything, but no one will take me seriously." "Why not?" The woman's voice dropped. "Because I'm 26. Because I don't have a lot of collateral. Because the neighborhoods I want to serve are considered high risk. Pick your reason. They all add up to no." Nia looked at the folder in her hands. "Can I see your business plan?" The woman blinked. "You work here?" "Something like that." The woman handed over the folder. Nia flipped through it. The plan was thorough. Well-researched, realistic projections, partnerships with community organizations already in place. It was exactly the kind of venture a bank should be excited to support. Nia closed the folder and handed it back. "Go talk to Patricia, the manager. Tell her Dr. Caldwell sent you and that I want her to review this personally." The woman's eyes widened. "Dr. Caldwell? I'm the person who's going to make sure you get a fair shot," Nia said. "Now go, before I change my mind and do it myself." The woman smiled, really smiled, and hurried toward the desk. Nia watched her go. Watched Patricia look up, listen, and then pull up a chair to go through the business plan right there. No dismissiveness, no assumptions, just professionalism and genuine interest. This was what it was supposed to look like. Nia left the branch feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Her phone buzzed on the way to her car. A text from Paul. "Price's team sent a new settlement offer, $200,000. It's insulting, but it means they're scared." Nia texted back. "Reject it." Paul's response came immediately. "You're sure?" "Completely." She got in her car and drove home through the city streets. The sun was setting, painting the buildings in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, Evan Price was probably sitting in his apartment wondering how his life had fallen apart. Somewhere else, Derek Finch was doing the same. And in courtrooms and conference rooms and branch offices across the system, people were being held accountable for the first time in years. It was messy, it was expensive, it was exhausting, but it was necessary. Nia pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, just breathing. She thought about the woman in scrubs, about the catering couple Patricia had helped, about every customer who'd been turned away because someone decided they didn't look profitable enough. The system had failed them, but the system could be fixed, one branch at a time, one policy at a time, one person at a time. She got out of the car and went inside. Tomorrow there would be more work, more resistance, more people who thought the old ways were good enough. But tonight she allowed herself to believe that change was possible, that integrity could be profitable, that a bank could serve everyone, not just the people who looked like they belonged. And maybe, just maybe, that was worth fighting for. The next morning, Nia woke to her phone ringing. It was India Ross, and she sounded breathless. "We've got another one," India said. Nia sat up. "Another what?" "Another manager, West Side branch. Tyler flagged a pattern last night. Senior accounts manager has been closing accounts for customers who fall behind on minimum balances without giving them the required notice period, almost exclusively targeting lower-income clients." Nia was already out of bed, reaching for clothes. "How many accounts?" 47 in the last year." "And the manager's name?" "Sharon Voss, 15 years with the bank, spotless record, community volunteer. Everyone loves her." Nia closed her eyes. Of course, the problem wasn't always the obvious villains. Sometimes it was the people who thought they were doing the right thing while quietly reinforcing the exact inequalities the system was built on. "I'm on my way," Nia said. She hung up and got dressed quickly, grabbed her keys, headed for the door. This was her life now. Putting out fires, holding people accountable, rebuilding trust one branch at a time. It was exhausting. It was relentless. But every time she wanted to stop, she thought about that woman in scrubs, about Sandra Ortiz and her bakery, about the catering couple and their wedding cake story. They deserved better. And Nia was going to make sure they got it. She drove to the West Side branch with the sunrise in her rearview mirror, ready to have another hard conversation with another person who probably thought they were just doing their job. Because that was the thing about systemic problems. They didn't announce themselves. They hid in procedures and policies and the quiet assumption that some people mattered more than others. And Nia Caldwell was done letting them hide. Sharon Voss was a pleasant woman in her early 50s with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and a desk covered in photos of her grandchildren. She stood when Nia entered her office, extending a hand with a warm smile. "Dr. Caldwell, what a lovely surprise. I've been meaning to reach out about the new training modules. I think they're wonderful." Nia didn't sit. "Ms. Voss, I'm here about the accounts you've been closing." Sharon's smile faltered. "I'm sorry?" 47 accounts in the last year, all closed for falling below minimum balance requirements, all belonging to customers who weren't given the standard 30-day notice to bring their accounts current. Sharon's face went pale. Those were administrative errors. The system sometimes—" "The system didn't close those accounts," Nia cut her off. "You did, manually. And you did it to customers who couldn't afford to fight back." Sharon sat down heavily. "Dr. Caldwell, I've been with this bank for 15 years. I would never intentionally harm a customer. Then explain to me why every single account you closed belonged to someone making under $40,000 a year." Sharon opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Those accounts, they were costing the bank money. The fees barely covered the maintenance. And when people can't maintain a minimum balance, sometimes it's kinder to close the account before they rack up more fees." "Kinder?" Nia repeated. "You closed their accounts without notice because you thought it was kind? I thought I was helping them avoid debt." "You were helping the bank avoid unprofitable customers." Sharon's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair. I volunteer at a food bank. I mentor young professionals. I've spent my entire career trying to serve this community." "And yet," Nia said quietly, "you decided that 47 people in that community didn't deserve the courtesy of a warning before you cut them off from their bank accounts. Do you know what happens when someone's account gets closed without notice? Their automatic payments bounce. Their direct deposits get rejected. They can end up evicted or without utilities or unable to buy groceries. And you did that to 47 people because you thought it was administratively convenient." Sharon was crying now. "I didn't think of it that way." "That's the problem," Nia said. "You didn't think of them at all." India stepped forward and placed a folder on Sharon's desk. Inside was a termination letter and a full accounting of every account closure, complete with documentation of the policy violations. Sharon looked at the letter. "You're firing me." "Yes. After 15 years. After 15 years of apparently not understanding that every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, regardless of how much money they have." Sharon wiped her eyes. Her voice was small. "I really thought I was doing the right thing." "I believe you," Nia said. And she did. That was the tragedy of it. Sharon probably did think she was being helpful, probably told herself she was protecting people from accumulating fees. Never once considered that what she was really doing was deciding that poor people were too much trouble to bother with. Nia turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. Ms. Voss, I want you to understand something. The Caldwell Standard isn't about punishing people. It's about accountability. You violated policy, you harmed customers, and those actions have consequences. But if you take anything from this, let it be this. Intention doesn't matter if the impact is discriminatory. You can be a wonderful person who volunteers and mentors and loves your grandchildren, and you can still perpetuate a system that treats people as disposable. The two things aren't mutually exclusive. Sharon didn't respond. She just sat there with the termination letter in her hands, looking small and broken. Nia walked out of the office and kept walking until she reached her car. She sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. This was the part that wore on her. Not the Evan Prices of the world, who were cruel and obvious, but the Sharon Vosses, the people who genuinely believed they were good, who did good things in other parts of their lives, but who had internalized the same toxic logic that valued profit over people. Those were harder to root out, because they didn't see themselves as part of the problem. Nia's phone buzzed, a message from Tyler. Found another pattern. Northern branch. Can you call me? Nia stared at the message. Another branch, another problem, another person who'd have to be held accountable. It never stopped, but neither would she. Nia started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, already mentally preparing for the next conversation, the next termination, the next step in dismantling a culture that had been built over decades. 6 months, the board had said. 6 months to prove this could work. She was halfway there. And she wasn't slowing down. The northern branch sat at the edge of the financial district, a glass and steel structure that looked more like a tech startup than a traditional bank. Nia had been there twice before during the initial rollout of the Caldwell Standard, and both times she'd been impressed by the manager's enthusiasm and the staff's professionalism, which made Tyler's discovery all the more disturbing. She met him in the parking lot. Tyler looked like he hadn't slept, his laptop bag slung over one shoulder and dark circles under his eyes. Show me, Nia said. Tyler pulled out his laptop and opened a spreadsheet. The manager here is a guy named Jordan Chen. Great reviews, high customer satisfaction. But look at this. He highlighted a column of data. Over the last 18 months, this branch has referred 73 customers to debt collection agencies. That's 3 times the rate of any other branch our size. Nia studied the numbers. What kind of debts? Mostly overdraft fees, customers who bounced checks or went negative on their accounts. But here's the thing. The bank's standard practice is to work with customers on payment plans before referring them to collections. Jordan's been skipping that step and sending people straight to collections after 30 days. Why? Tyler scrolled down. Because it clears the books faster, makes his default rates look better on paper, and collections agencies pay a bounty for referrals. Not much, but it adds up. Nia felt the familiar tightness in her chest. So he's profiting off putting people into financial hardship. Not just that. Look at the demographics. Tyler pulled up another tab. 89% of the customers he referred to collections are people of color. Most of them are first-generation account holders, the kind of customers who don't know they have the right to negotiate payment terms. Nia closed her eyes. This was worse than Evan's cruelty or Sharon's misguided paternalism. This was calculated exploitation of people who were already vulnerable, dressed up in the language of efficiency and policy compliance. Where is he now? She asked. Inside. I told him we were doing a routine audit. Nia picked up her briefcase and headed for the entrance. Tyler followed. Jordan Chen was waiting in his office, all smiles and confident handshakes. He was young, maybe 35, with the kind of polished charm that probably made him very good at his job. He offered Nia coffee, commented on the weather, asked how the Caldwell Standard was rolling out across the system. Nia sat across from him and didn't waste time with pleasantries. Mr. Chen, you've referred 73 customers to debt collection agencies in the last 18 months. Walk me through your process. Jordan's smile didn't falter. Of course. We follow standard protocol. When an account goes into default and the customer doesn't respond to our outreach attempts, We refer them to collections after the 30-day grace period. Define outreach attempts. We send automated notices, email and mail, 3 attempts over the 30-day period. Do you call them? Jordan hesitated. Not typically. The automated system handles most of it. So you send 3 form letters and then you destroy their credit. Jordan's smile faded. That's a bit dramatic, Dr. Caldwell. We're just following policy. Policy requires you to offer payment plan options before referring to collections. Did you do that? The letters include information about payment plans. Did you personally reach out to any of these customers to discuss their options? Jordan shifted in his seat. I manage 40 employees. I don't have time to personally call every customer who bounces a check. Then who does? The system handles it. The system, Naya repeated. The same system that's referred 89% people of color to collections, while your branch serves a customer base that's only 60% people of color. The math doesn't add up, Mr. Chen. Jordan's face went red. I don't make decisions based on race. That's insulting. Then explain the disparity. I can't. I don't track demographics on collections referrals. You should, Nia said. She opened her briefcase and pulled out Tyler's full report, page after page of data showing the pattern. Young accounts, low balances, first-generation customers who didn't know they could push back, and Jordan's branch collecting referral fees from the collections agency while those customers' credit scores tanked. You've been gaming the system, Nia said quietly, making your numbers look good by pushing your problem customers onto someone else. And you've been doing it in a way that disproportionately harms the most vulnerable people you serve. Jordan stood abruptly. I've done nothing wrong. Every referral I made was within policy guidelines. If you're trying to make this about race, I'm making this about impact, Nia cut him off. You can hide behind policy all you want, but when 89% of the people you're sending to collections are people of color, that's not random. That's a pattern, and patterns don't lie. Jordan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You can't fire me for this. I followed the rules. You followed the letter of the rules while violating their spirit, Nia said, and that's exactly the kind of behavior the Caldwell Standard was designed to eliminate. She handed him a termination letter. Jordan stared at it like it might bite him. This is unbelievable, he said. I'm one of your top performers. My customer satisfaction scores are based on surveys sent only to customers who still have accounts, Nia finished. They don't include the 73 people you pushed into collections. Funny how that works. Jordan threw the letter on his desk. You're going to regret this. My uncle is on the board of the Regional Banking Association. I know people. Good, Nia said. Tell them what happened. Tell them that Metropolitan Trust holds people accountable when they exploit customers. I'd love for that message to spread. She turned and walked out. Tyler was waiting in the hallway, looking shaken. That was intense, he said quietly. It needed to be. Nia kept walking. Pull the full list of customers he referred to collections. I want personal outreach to every single one of them. Apology letters, offers to reverse the referrals if they're still in process, and compensation for any credit score damage. Tyler's eyes widened. That's going to cost. I don't care what it costs. Those people were failed by this institution. We're going to make it right. By the time Nia got back to headquarters, word had spread. 3 terminations in 2 weeks. The legal team was having a collective panic attack. HR was fielding calls from nervous employees wanting to know if they were next, and the board had called an emergency meeting. Nia walked into the conference room to find all 12 board members waiting. Robert's face was grim. Judith looked worried. Gerald Tisch was openly angry. 3 terminations, Gerald said before Nia even sat down. In 2 weeks. Do you have any idea what kind of liability exposure that creates? Less than the liability of keeping people who harm customers, Nia replied. That's easy to say when you're not the one defending wrongful termination suits. Then let them sue. We'll win. Robert held up a hand. Nia, we support what you're trying to do. But you're moving too fast. Every termination creates risk. Every policy change disrupts operations. We need to slow down. Well, we're 4 months into a 6-month timeline, Nia said. We don't have time to slow down. Judith spoke up. The metrics are improving, customer retention is up, new accounts are growing, but employee morale is tanking. People are scared. They don't know if they're next. Good, Nia said. They should be scared if they're treating customers unfairly. That's not sustainable, Judith argued. You can't build a culture on fear. I'm not building a culture on fear. I'm building a culture on accountability. There's a difference. Gerald leaned forward. Dr. Caldwell, we're facing 3 potential lawsuits. The legal fees alone are going to run into 7 figures. The negative press is affecting our stock price. And you've created an environment where good employees are afraid to make decisions because they might be the next one fired. This has to stop. Nia met his eyes. What has to stop? Holding people accountable? Protecting customers? Making sure that every person who walks into our branches gets treated with dignity. No one's arguing against that. Yes, you are, Nia said. You're just using different words. You want me to slow down because it's messy, because it's expensive, because it makes people uncomfortable. But the alternative is going back to a system where we profit off discrimination and pretend it's just good business. I won't do that. The room was silent. Robert took a breath. Nia, we gave you 6 months. You've got 2 left. But if these lawsuits go sideways, if the financial impact gets worse, we're going to have to reconsider. Reconsider what? Nia asked. The Caldwell standard? Or me? Robert didn't answer. He didn't have to. Nia stood. I'll be in my office. Let me know when you're ready to make a decision. She walked out before anyone could respond. That night, Nia sat alone in her office long after everyone else had gone home. The building was quiet, except for the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional sound of traffic from the street below. She stared at the city lights through her window and wondered if she'd pushed too hard. 3 terminations, 3 lawsuits, a board that was losing faith, employees who were scared to make mistakes, and she still had 2 months to prove this was all worth it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Paul DeLuca. Price's attorney called. Final settlement offer, $400,000. Take it or leave it. Nia stared at the message. $400,000 to make Evan Price go away. To avoid a trial that could drag on for months. To give the board one less thing to worry about. She texted back. Leave it. Paul's response was immediate. Are you sure? Completely. Nia, this could go very badly. Then it goes badly, but we don't pay him to validate his behavior. She set the phone down and leaned back in her chair. The smart play was to settle, cut her losses, show the board she was willing to be pragmatic. But smart wasn't the same as right, and Nia had built her entire career on doing what was right, even when it cost her. A knock on her door pulled her from her thoughts. She looked up to see May Park standing in the doorway, looking hesitant. Dr. Caldwell, I'm sorry to bother you. I saw your light on. It's fine. Come in. May stepped inside. She looked different than she had that day in the downtown branch. More confident, less scared. She'd been working with Sharonda Hayes for months now, and it showed. I wanted to give you something, May said. She handed Nia a folder. Inside were reports from the downtown branch, customer satisfaction scores, employee feedback, incident logs. Nia flipped through them. The numbers were remarkable. Customer satisfaction up 32%, complaints down to almost 0, employee turnover at an all-time low, and written testimonials from customers praising the branch for how they'd been treated. Patricia's doing an amazing job, May said. The culture there is completely different. People actually want to come to work, and customers are noticing. Nia looked up. And you? How are you doing? May smiled. Better, a lot better. I speak up now when I see something wrong, and I'm training the new hires to do the same. It's like the whole branch has permission to care about people instead of just metrics. That's what I was hoping for, Nia said quietly. May hesitated. I know things are hard right now. I've heard the rumors about the board, about the lawsuits, but I wanted you to know that what you're doing matters, not just for the customers, for us too. You gave us our dignity back. Nia felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you, May. May nodded and left. Nia sat alone with the folder, reading through the testimonials. A woman who'd been helped with a small business loan and couldn't stop praising how respectfully she'd been treated. A man who'd been about to close his account at another bank and switched to Metropolitan Trust because he'd heard about the Caldwell Standard. A young couple who wrote that they'd never felt more welcome in a financial institution. This was why she was doing it. Not for the board, not for the metrics, for these people. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Tyler. Just got confirmation. All 73 customers from Northern Branch have been contacted. 52 of them accepted our offer to reverse the collections referrals. The other 21 had already paid or settled. We're sending compensation checks to all of them. Naya texted back. Good work. How much is this costing us? Total? About $200,000 in reversals and compensation, plus legal fees to unwind the collections processes. $200,000 to make 73 people whole. The board would probably have a collective heart attack when they saw the expense report. But Nia didn't care. Some things were more important than quarterly earnings. She closed the folder and stood. It was late. She should go home. But instead she found herself walking through the empty headquarters building, past the cubicles and conference rooms and executive offices, thinking about all the decisions that had been made in these spaces over the years. Good decisions and bad ones. Profitable decisions and principled ones. And all the times those two things had failed to align. She ended up in the lobby, standing in front of a wall of photographs showing the bank's history. There she was in the early pictures, young and determined, standing in front of the original storefront location. Just one employee, one dream. The belief that banking could be different, could be better. Somewhere along the way, that dream had gotten lost in the pursuit of growth and profit and market share. And it had taken a humiliating encounter in her own branch to wake her up to what she'd allowed to happen. But she was awake now, and she wasn't going back to sleep. The trial date for Evan Price's lawsuit was set for 6 weeks out. Paul DeLuca had built a case that was airtight on paper, but trials were unpredictable. Juries were unpredictable, and Evan's attorney was good at his job. Nia spent the weeks preparing, reviewing footage, reading depositions, going through every piece of documentation they had. She met with the customers who'd complained about Evan and asked if they'd be willing to testify. Most said yes. A few said no, not wanting to relive the experience. Nia understood. The board gave her weekly updates on the metrics. Customer retention was up 38% now. New accounts had grown by 46%. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. And the negative press around the lawsuits was starting to shift as more stories came out about customers who'd been helped by the Caldwell Standard. But the financial numbers were still tight. The legal fees and compensation costs were eating into profits. The stock price had stabilized but wasn't growing, and Gerald Tisch kept sending thinly veiled emails suggesting it was time to reassess the current strategy. Nia ignored him and kept working. 2 weeks before the trial, she got an unexpected call. It was from Richard Brennan, Evan's attorney. Dr. Caldwell, I'd like to request a meeting, off the record, just you, me, and my client. Nia's instinct was to refuse, but something in Richard's tone made her pause. What for? My client would like to speak with you directly. No lawyers, no recording devices, just a conversation. Nia thought about it. When? Tomorrow, 1 o'clock. My office. I'll be there. She hung up and immediately called Paul. He thought it was a terrible idea. This could be a trap. He could be recording you. He could twist anything you say. Then I won't say anything I wouldn't say on the stand, Nia replied. Paul sighed. I'm coming with you. No, he said no lawyers. He saw. I'll be fine, Paul. Trust me. The next day, Nia drove to Richard Brennan's office in a high-rise downtown. The receptionist showed her to a conference room where Evan was waiting. He looked worse than he had at the deposition, thinner, older, like the fight had drained something essential out of him. Richard stood when she entered. Dr. Caldwell, thank you for coming. Nia sat across from Evan. You wanted to talk, so talk. Evan didn't meet her eyes at first. He stared at his hands, fingers laced together on the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I've been thinking about what you said. At the deposition. About me being good at the parts that got measured and failing at the parts that mattered. Nia waited. I've spent the last few months replaying that day over and over, Evan continued, trying to figure out where I went wrong. And the truth is, I still think I was doing my job. I still think I was following the training, but I'm starting to realize that maybe the training was wrong, that maybe I was wrong. What changed your mind? Nia asked. Evan looked up. I applied for a job last month. Retail management position, nothing like what I was doing before, but I needed work. I walked in for the interview and the manager took one look at me and decided I was overqualified. Said I wouldn't be happy there. Showed me the door before I even got to explain why I wanted the job. He laughed bitterly. And I stood there in the parking lot thinking, this is what I did to you. This is what I did to all those people. I judged them before they even opened their mouths. I decided they didn't belong. And I was so sure I was right. Nia didn't respond. She just listened. I'm not here to ask for my job back, Evan said. I know that's not happening, but I wanted to tell you that I'm dropping the lawsuit. Richard thinks I'm making a mistake, but I can't keep pretending I was the victim here. I wasn't. I was the problem. Richard shifted in his seat but stayed quiet. Nia studied Evan's face, looking for signs of manipulation or strategy. But all she saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine regret. What are you going to do now? She asked. I don't know, Evan admitted. Figure out who I am when I'm not chasing metrics and performance bonuses. Maybe work somewhere that I can't do any damage. Maybe just learn to be better. Nia sat back. Mr. Price, I appreciate you dropping the lawsuit, but I want to be clear about something. What you did wasn't just bad judgment. It was harmful. You hurt people. And saying you're sorry doesn't undo that damage. I know. But it's a start, Nia continued. And if you're serious about being better, then prove it. Not with words, with actions. Find a way to make amends. And don't ever let yourself forget what it felt like to be on the other side of that judgment. Evan nodded slowly. I won't. Nia stood. Good luck, Mr. Price. She left the office and didn't look back. When she told Paul that the lawsuit was being dropped, he was speechless. When she told the board, Robert actually smiled for the first time in months. The stock price ticked up, the legal fees stopped mounting, and suddenly the narrative shifted. The business press that had been skeptical started writing articles about the Caldwell Standard as a bold experiment in ethical banking. Social media influencers picked up the story. Business schools reached out to develop case studies, and customers kept coming. By the end of the 6-month timeline, the numbers were undeniable. Customer retention up 49%, new accounts up 62%, employee satisfaction in the top decile nationwide, and profit margins recovering faster than projected. The board meeting where Nia presented the final results felt different. There was no tension, no skepticism, just a room full of people who'd bet on her vision and were starting to see it pay off. Judith spoke first. I'll admit I had my doubts. But you've proven that doing the right thing and doing good business aren't mutually exclusive. Gerald Tisch, who'd been her biggest critic, actually nodded. The institutional investors are happy. The metrics speak for themselves. You've built something sustainable here. Robert stood and extended his hand. Nia, on behalf of the board, I want to say we were wrong to doubt you. The Caldwell Standard isn't just good policy. It's the future of this institution. Nia shook his hand. It's not my standard, it's ours. Every employee who chose to change, every manager who held themselves accountable, every customer who gave us another chance, they're the ones who made this work. The board approved a formal resolution adopting the Caldwell Standard across all branches permanently. They allocated funding for ongoing training and monitoring, and they gave Nia full authority to expand the program however she saw fit. When the meeting adjourned, Nia walked out into the hallway and let herself breathe for the first time in 6 months. 3 months later, Nia stood in the lobby of a brand new Metropolitan Trust branch in a neighborhood that had been underserved by traditional banking for decades. The grand opening was packed. Local business owners, community leaders, families who'd never felt welcome in a bank before. Patricia Okonkwo was managing this location too. She'd asked for the assignment specifically, wanting to bring what she'd built at the downtown branch to a community that needed it most. Nia watched as Patricia helped a young woman open her first savings account. The woman was nervous, asking questions about fees and minimums and whether she really qualified. Patricia walked her through everything patiently, kindly, treating her like her business mattered, because it did. Across the lobby, May was training a new assistant manager, showing her how to spot the subtle signs that someone might need extra help or support. Tyler was in the back's office reviewing real-time monitoring data, flagging any interactions that seemed off so they could be addressed immediately. And in offices and branches across the system, hundreds of employees were doing the same thing, treating people with dignity, holding themselves accountable, building something that would last. Nia's phone buzzed. A text from the woman in scrubs she'd met months ago outside the downtown branch. Her mobile health clinic had launched. The loan Patricia approved had made it possible. She'd sent a photo of the ribbon-cutting ceremony with a message. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Nia smiled and slipped her phone back into her pocket. She thought about Evan, wherever he was now, hopefully learning to be better. About Sharon Voss and Jordan Chen and all the others who'd had to be removed so the system could heal. About the customers who'd been harmed and the ones who'd been helped. About the long, hard road from that Tuesday afternoon in the downtown branch to this moment. It hadn't been easy. It had cost her sleep and stress and political capital. It had required her to make hard decisions and stand firm when everyone around her was telling her to compromise. But she'd been right. Doing the right thing was possible. It was profitable. And it was worth fighting for. A reporter from the local news approached and asked if she had a comment for their story on the branch opening. Nia thought for a moment, then said, "Banking should be for everyone, not just the people who look profitable, not just the people who fit someone's idea of what a customer should be. Everyone. And if we can't figure out how to serve everyone with dignity and respect, then we don't deserve to be in business." The reporter scribbled that down, thanked her, and moved on. Nia stayed in the lobby for another hour, watching people come and go, watching her employees treat each person like they mattered, watching a system she'd almost lost slowly transform into something she could be proud of again. As the sun set and the crowd thinned, Patricia walked over. "Thank you for this opportunity," Patricia said. "This branch, this community, it's exactly what I've been wanting to do my whole career." "You earned it," Nia replied. "So did you," Patricia said. "You could have taken the easy way out, settled the lawsuits, slowed down the changes, protected yourself. But you didn't. You fought for something better. And now look at what we've built." Nia looked around the lobby one more time, at the families opening accounts, at the small business owners asking about loans, at the employees who finally had permission to care about people instead of just hitting targets. "We've built what it should have been all along," Nia said quietly. "And now we make sure it stays that way." She stayed until the branch closed for the day, then drove home through the city streets as the lights came on one by one. Her phone was full of messages. Congratulations from colleagues, interview requests from journalists, partnership proposals from advocacy groups. But the message that mattered most was from Tyler. "Just finished the quarterly audit. 0 incidents across all branches. Every customer interaction reviewed, every complaint addressed. We actually did it." Nia pulled into her driveway and sat in the car, reading that message over and over. 0 incidents. After months of fighting and firing and rebuilding, they'd actually created a system that worked, that treated people fairly, that held itself accountable. It wouldn't be perfect forever. There would be new challenges, new people who needed to be held accountable, new problems to solve. But they'd proven it was possible, that a bank could be profitable and principled, that doing the right thing could be good business. Nia got out of the car and looked up at the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Evan Price was hopefully figuring out who he wanted to be. Somewhere else, customers who'd been turned away were getting second chances. And in branches across 3 states, employees were going home knowing they'd spent their day treating people with dignity. That was worth everything she'd fought for. Nia went inside, poured herself a glass of wine, and allowed herself to finally, truly rest. The work wasn't over. It would never really be over. But tonight, she could celebrate knowing she'd turned a viral moment of humiliation into lasting, meaningful change. The customer who'd been dismissed had become the CEO who refused to dismiss anyone. And the bank she'd built was finally living up to the vision she'd had 23 years ago when she'd first opened those doors. Some people would call it justice. Others would call it good business. Nia called it both. And she was just getting started.